There was more than just drama in the courtroom, so stop whatever you're doing. A full-fledged explosion occurred. The judge pounded his gavel, jurors leaned closer, cameras flashed, and then it occurred. Harris King, though with tears in his eyes and a trembling voice, the arrogant son of T stepped up and spoke the words that no one had ever imagined hearing. I apologize. But hold on. King made the ultimate betrayal before the room could even breathe. He wasn't only sorry, he yelled and pointed his fingers directly at his own father. He was the one. T forced me to do everything. Can you imagine it? Reporters are gaping. Fans gripped their phones tightly. Tiny's face was covered with horror. In a matter of seconds, the courtroom transformed from quiet to commotion. Law and order wasn't in play here. This was authentic, unvarnished, and went viral. The world is now wondering if King finally gave in to pressure, or if did he just reveal the most sinister secret that hip-hop has ever attempted to conceal. Is this the worst betrayal or survival in history of music? Don't blink, because everything T created might be destroyed by what King disclosed in that hearing. And believe me, this is only the start. Like thunder, the gavel reverberated, but nothing could quiet the uproar that erupted after King Harris's admission. Time stood still for a minute. The once celebrated monarch of the South, T.I. sat still, gazing at his son as if he had just witnessed a ghost emerge from the afterlife. Tiny gripped her chest tightly. As the gallery's patrons gasped, phones sprang up to capture the moment, and hashtags appeared seconds later. They became viral on the internet. #KT activates T, #Courtroom Bombshell, #Destroy Dynasty. However, this was not a chance development of destiny. Even though it was a startling moment, it had been building for years. The years before, T himself had forewarned his kid on television. Websites had conjectured, and the streets had whispered, if prison is going to devour you if you don't slow down, irony is insufficient to describe it, since here they were, dad and son, imprisoned in a courtroom as adversaries rather than family. First came the apologies, gentle and almost pathetic. King turned to the judge, and his voice broke. I am aware of my errors. I am aware of my family's embarrassment. I simply want to say I'm sorry for what I did. For a brief moment, the crowd seemed to soften, as if this were just another famous child confessing to his mistake. Then, however, something happened. He exploded the truth bomb while turning to face his father. In actuality, though, it wasn't just me. Clifford Harris, my father, forced me to do it. He was responsible for the transactions, the illicit money, and the weaponry. The courtroom fell apart. Reporters hurried from their chairs, rushing to the text editors. In the gallery, a lady said, "Oh my God." While yelling for order, the judge struck the gavel once more. However, the mayhem was uncontrollable. This was no longer testimony. It was a historical betrayal. King wasn't done yet. His voice became louder despite his shaking hands and tear-streaked visage, sharpening each word. In order to keep himself clean, he instructed me to carry the pistols. He instructed me to operate the vehicles so that he was not stopped by the cops. Even if the empire destroys me, it must continue through me, he declared. Imagine being able to hear that live. The son who used to show off his expensive automobiles on Instagram, who, with a few shuddering words, reduced his father's kingdom to ashes while boasting about his last name as if it were a badge of pride. On TMZ, a Shakespearean tragedy was unfolding. T, on the other hand, said nothing. His eyes flitted and his jaw tensed, but he said nothing. Some referred to it as shock. It was guilt, others muttered. However, everything was captured on video when a parent discovered his own family had sliced him open in public view. News outlets had already framed the story by the time of the lunch break. Every television portrayed King Harris snitching on his father in court. Talk shows hurried to reserve legal analysts, social media divided in two, and gossip sites overflowing with speculations. King was hailed by some as a heroic young guy who refused to be sacrificed by a father intoxicated by power. Some accused him of being a snitch, to protect himself. The pampered child would sell out his family. The Harris name was formerly associated with Southern hipness. The internet as a whole was now using hip-hop supremacy as a target. But don't get me wrong, this was more than a rumor. Prosecutors were salivating behind the scenes. The case was completely unraveled by King's testimony. According to courtroom insiders, FBI sources, and leaked papers, the apology wasn't practiced. It had nothing to do with a legal plan. It was unplanned, unpolished, and devastatingly powerful. With an insider destroying the empire from within, the prosecution finally got what they had long desired. Meanwhile, supporters gathered with placards outside the courthouse. While some scrawled "Lock T up" in large characters, others read "Free King." Overhead, news helicopters captured the chaos. It was dubbed the trial of the decade by many, not just due to the accusations, but also because of the fundamental betrayal. When a son expresses regret to the world while simultaneously disparaging his father, family drama isn't all of it. It is worldwide spectacle. Tiny's response made headlines of its own. She was captured on camera. With tears streaming down her cheeks, she mouthed the words, "Not like this." For decades, through allegations of infidelity, upheaval on reality TV, and public arguments, she had been the glue that kept the Harris family together. But even for her, this was too much. In the middle of her evidence, she fled the courtroom, accompanied by bodyguards, her cries reverberating across the corridor. The description for that video alone, "Tiny can't take the truth." King continued inside. He talked about evenings when T supposedly directed him to deliver parcels. He described private exchanges in which his father allegedly chuckled at maintaining while his son endured the heat. He cleaned his hands, each phrase added to the mound of mistrust. And even if defense lawyers protested, yelled about hearsay, and sought evidence, the harm had already been done. It had been heard by the jury. Everyone had heard it. By the conclusion of the King, Harris wasn't only a witness that day, a weapon of mass destruction. He was. Decades had been destroyed by a single testimony of a skillfully composed image. T was no longer only a rapper. He was a headline. A hip-hop mogul's kid betrayed him. Not even the cameras had cooled off as soon as the next bombshell came in. The FBI chose to add fuel to the fire when media were still in shock after King Harris's accusation against T. Fire. Grainy yet damaging. Leaked videos slammed into the internet. It revealed a hazy person inside a studio, guns laying against the wall, cash stacked high on a table, and a voice that uncannily resembled T. The video went viral more quickly than wildfire, with the message, "If they ever catch you, remember, you fall alone." Instagram, TikTok, and Twitter all become battlegrounds. A few people yelled it was doctored. The timing was too good, but some insisted it was the smoking gun. The leak gave King's testimony legitimacy just hours after he testified. Fans were unaware. What was certain, though, was what to believe. Officially, the Harris dynasty was radioactive. Prosecutors moved across the courtroom like blood-smelling sharks. They displayed printouts of purportedly intercepted talks between T and unidentified accomplices, which they said were FBI transcripts. The jurors leaned forward at the words, coded drop sites, shipments, and the terrifying statement, "The youngster will bear it, and no one challenges him." Even if half of it was inflated, the division of a parent molding his son into a fall man was clear enough. The meme began at that point. TikTok edits displaying T.I.'s previous music videos with screenshots of King sobbing in court with the tagline, "Daddy made me do it." Interspersed with FBI records, creators posted explainers titled "The Rise and Fall of the Harris Empire" on YouTube, as though this had already happened. The trial was no longer about guilt or innocence in the eyes of the internet. It was for amusement. And did folks enjoy themselves. But there was a deeper river running beneath the mayhem. Receipts were dropped by anonymous accounts claiming to be insiders. Screenshots of purported emails that connect money from Harris Entertainment to foreign accounts. Images of extravagant gatherings where politicians socialized with convicted criminals. The unsettling assertion that this case involved more than simply drugs and firearms. It was about hiding something considerably more significant, a network of corruption that extended from Washington to Atlanta. Consider the headlines. It sounded like a government plot and rap royalty. Ridiculous, however. When King Harris accused the court of treachery, anything appeared to be conceivable. The fans were conflicted. King, according to some, showed courage by severing the bonds that bound him to a criminal past. Others cruelly dragged him, accusing him of being weak for betraying the guy who had saved his life. It was a vicious divide. Hashtags that fought for supremacy were hashtag King then itch and hashtag freaking. Even famous people began to comment. "This ain't it, bro," tweeted a well-known rapper from Atlanta. "You don't snitch on blood." In response, a TV host said, "So you're upset with King for being honest, but not at T for placing his kid in that situation?" The argument wasn't only a muddle, it was a conflict. Tiny remained silent. During it all, her Instagram, which is often filled with family pictures and advertisements, became silent. Any comment was overshadowed by the quiet. Thousands of comments were left on her most recent post by fans, saying, "Say the family is finished. Tiny, are you standing with King or with T?" Like vultures circling the remains of a cadaver, it was unrelenting. Then arrived, no one was prepared for the leaks. On Reddit, a file titled Harris Case Evidence also appeared and was distributed across groups on Telegram. There were briefcases filled with cash, cartons bearing military stamps, and purported FBI images, and hazy stills of T shaking hands in suits. Was it authentic? Who knew? It didn't matter though. In a time when perception is reality, the pictures went viral, stoking the flames until the Harris name was associated with controversy. Late-night hosts seized the opportunity as well. It appears that T ought to have changed his name to CI, as in criminal informant, one person quipped. The audience burst out laughing. King Harris just gave the best Father's Day speech. Another person commented, present ever an arrest warrant. The Harris family had turned into a joke, and once you're joked about, you can't get back on your feet. Is nearly difficult. In the meanwhile, the defense fumbled in court. Tia's attorneys said the video was phony. Prosecutors were manipulating that king and staging the leaks. However, their remarks were incoherent. The shout of popular opinion overpowered all objections. Despite being sworn to impartiality, jurors were still people, and people browse Instagram. They view TikTok. The memes are visible to them. They sense the strain. The FBI was no longer even hiding by the middle of the trial. They said that they were looking at evidence related to the Harris case and alluded to more extensive examinations of financial anomalies. Just that sentence sent shockwaves across the music business. Who else would fall with T if he did? The consequences were immediate. Endorsements retreated. Quietly, radio stations ceased playing T.I.'s classics. Streaming playlists vanished. Platforms, even long-standing partners, made well-crafted remarks such as, "We're awaiting the facts, but the situation is dire." One canceled agreement at a time. The empire was collapsing in real time. Additionally, King, the young man who used to show off his Ferraris on Instagram, was now in protective custody and was said to cry every night. According to some reports, he felt bad for Snap. He was relieved, according to others. In any case, his reputation was irrevocably altered. He was no longer only T's son. He was the young man who broke down and came clean in front of millions of people. He was the Judas of hip-hop. Admirers was unable to stop arguing. Was he a hero or a coward? Either an opportunist or a victim? It became a nasty divide. Comments like "at least he told the truth" were left in the comments sections. It wasn't only a trial, as others spit out, "He'll never show his face in Atlanta again." No longer, a cultural reckoning took place. By the second week, fresh rumors indicated even more sinister secrets. Cover-ups of disappearances connected to the Harris family were suggested by whispered recordings. Empire, according to anonymous websites, people were coming forward to attest that the family's reach went much beyond the music business. Every leak was gasoline. Every rumor evolved into a new hot subject. The most absurd aspect was that nothing was slowing down. It was accelerating, if anything. Courtroom drama had given way to a full-fledged international conspiracy in the Harris case. Anchors on the news did it best. We are not only seeing a trial, we are seeing an empire's collapse. As a disturbing fact reverberated as the court adjourned for the day, the treachery was just the start. The FBI files, the leaks, the actual storm, and the outcry from around the world were still coming in, as well as if this movie broke down the walls of the foundation. Flashing cameras and yelling had turned the courthouse steps into a battlefield. Media as well as irate supporters. Crowds became bigger every day, and the chants got louder every day. One side screamed, "Lock him up!" The Free King yelled the another. Even Steele was unable to control the mayhem, despite police roadblocks. This was no longer merely a trial. The Harris family was the unwelcome star of the circus. Within the atmosphere in the courtroom was tense, invigorated by King's treachery and the FBI's doubled down. Nicely timed leaks. Audio recordings purportedly taken from encrypted devices were played. The A voice that sounded exactly like T's said, "Move the shipment tonight, don't let the kid mess it up." Throughout the room, gasps were heard. The jurors wrote notes. The judge's expression hardened. The harm was already irreparable, whether it was genuine or not. King avoided his father's gaze as he sat at the witness stand with his head bent. All of the things he had spoken in the previous days weighted around his neck like chains. The streets would never forgive him. He knew. Here, however, survival was more important than devotion under oath. Everything was captured by the cameras. The tremor in his palms, the quiet tears, and the quiver in his lip. Snippets of his breakdown got viral right away. With subtitles like "The Day Hip-Hop Royalty Collapsed," TikTokers reworked it. Prosecutors moved across the courtroom like blood-smelling sharks. They displayed printouts of purportedly intercepted talks between T and unidentified accomplices, which they said were FBI transcripts. The jurors leaned forward at the words, "Shipments, a cooling line," and designated drop points. "It will be carried by the child." No one challenges him. Despite the fact that half of it was inflated, the vision of a parent molding his son into a fall man was clear enough. The meme began at that point. TikTok edits displaying T.I.'s previous music videos with screenshots of King sobbing in court with the tagline, "Daddy made me do it." Interspersed with FBI records, creators posted explainers titled "The Rise and Fall of the Harris Empire" on YouTube, as though this had already happened. The trial was no longer about guilt or innocence in the eyes of the internet. It was for amusement. And did folks enjoy themselves? But there was a deeper river running beneath the mayhem. Receipts were dropped by anonymous accounts claiming to be insiders. Screenshots of purported emails that connect money from Harris Entertainment to foreign accounts. Images of extravagant gatherings where politicians socialize with convicted criminals. The unsettling assertion that this case involved more than simply drugs and firearms. It was about hiding something considerably more significant, a network of corruption that extended from Washington to Atlanta. Consider the headlines. From federal conspiracy to rap royalty, it sounded ridiculous. However, things changed all of a sudden when King Harris accused the court of betrayal. Appeared to be feasible. The fans were conflicted. King, according to some, showed courage by severing the bonds that bound him to a criminal history. Others cruelly dragged him, accusing him of being weak for betraying the man who had given him life. It was a vicious divide. Hashtags such as #freaking and #king, the snitch fought for supremacy. Even famous people began to comment. A well-liked Atlanta rapper. "This ain't it, bro. You don't snitch on blood." In the meanwhile, a television host shot back, "So, y'all mad at King for telling the truth, but not at T for putting his son in that position?" The show's not only was the discussion ugly, but it was also a battle, and Tiny remained mute throughout. Her Instagram, which is often filled with promotions and family photographs, disappeared. Any comment was overshadowed by the quiet. Fans flocked to her most recent post, saying thousands of times, "Tiny, say something. Are you with King or T?" It was unrelenting, like vultures circling the last remnants of a carcass. The family is done. Nobody was prepared for the disclosures that followed. Additionally, a file named Harris Case Evidence appeared on Reddit and spread throughout Telegram communities. There were alleged FBI images and military-marked containers inside, hazy stills of guys in suits shaking hands with T, stamps, and briefcases full of cash. Was it authentic? Who could have known? It didn't matter though. In a time when perception is reality, the pictures spread like wildfire, making the Harris name a byword for controversy. Additionally, late-night hosts seized on it. It appears that T ought to have altered his name to CI, as in criminal informant. The audience burst up laughing. King, another said. An arrest warrant was Harris's finest Father's Day present ever. The Harris family had become a joke. It's very hard to get back on your feet after you've become a punchline. In the meanwhile, the defense fumbled in court. T.I.'s attorneys said that King was being coerced by prosecutors, that the leaks were faked, and that the video was fraudulent, but their remarks were incoherent. The shout of popular opinion overpowered all objections. Despite being sworn to impartiality, jurors were still people, and people browse Instagram. They view TikTok. The memes are visible to them. They sense the strain. The FBI was no longer even hiding by the middle of the trial. They said that they were looking at evidence related to the Harris case and alluded to more extensive examinations of financial anomalies. Just that sentence sent